Okay. All right, we are now live. Let's go ahead and test audio. Hey Philip, if you are there, please let me know if my audio is good. Just gonna go ahead and adjust the settings here. Let's take a look. All right, I don't want my audio to be too loud. Check, check, check. Is it on? Yep, it's on. Okay. Sweet. Okay. We're gonna let people filter in. Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. And I'm just gonna wait a few moments to let some people filter in. And once people kind of filter in, we'll go ahead and mention some announcements that we have about the channel and also about Discord. Could be a little louder. Okay, let's turn it up. How's that better? Okay. Make sure my pop shield is up. No one in chat yet, so just wait a few more moments. At least wait until 10 o'clock. Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Philip. Okay. Awesome. Good to have you outdoors, Wade and Savina Shell. Welcome. Excellent. Good. Yeah, you just keep me posted on the audio, okay? Great. Yeah, I'm excited about this stream. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this. Great. Hello, everyone. Okay, so just want to give a quick announcement about who will be moderating the chat. We've got Philip here. He's going to be the official moderator, so he's going to go ahead and answer any questions that you have in the chat, okay? So that way I can focus on the video. Okay, don't forget that also check in the chat for the template so that you can download it and clone edit it and then follow along in the video, okay? That link is in the chat and it's also in the description, the video description, so check both those locations. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. Okay, so looks like we've got a couple people in. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some announcements that we have. First, we have next month's stream schedule set up. I'll go ahead and provide that link. Let me quickly get that. I'm going to go ahead and post that in the description, or I'm sorry, in the chat. So if you click that link, that's going to take you to my profile and a map that has the calendar. It's going to give you what we're going to be doing next month, okay? Now for those of you who don't want to look at it, I'll go ahead and sum up what we're doing next month with the channel is we've created a series of templates with terrain, okay? And so we're going to take those terrain and next month we're going to take that terrain and we're going to put settlements on it, okay? So that way every single one of the maps also has all these settlements. So it's going to be forts, villages, towns, cities, whatever, okay? So that's going to be coming up next month. I'm really excited about that. It's also going to have more videos on the tools. And then that leads me into the next announcement. We're going to be doing what's called Inkarnate Shorts, which are going to be anywhere between 60 to 120 second videos that pretty much let you know about everything about the tools. It's the simplest stuff, how to create a new map, how to clone, how to get on the explore page, how to find out what resolution your map is at, how to know its dimensions. So all these simple questions, we're going to make sure to answer those, okay? So that's going to be coming up probably next month. Also, we're going to be doing possible guest streamers. That means people from our early access group are going to be coming on and doing streams as guests on stuff like that. So keep an eye on that. If you haven't been to our Discord, go check that out. Philip, if you could provide the link to the Discord, that would be great. Are we looking to make an app so I can make things from an iPad? We just have very little support right now for iPad that I am aware of, but we are working on that, just to let you know. And I want to go ahead and do one more announcement. Once Philip goes ahead and posts the Discord link, go ahead and click the link, go ahead and join. After you've joined, check the roles channel and click the Inkarnator role. For you to see all of the channels, you'll need that Inkarnator role, so keep that in mind. And we've added a new role as well. It's called a Stream Watch role, and that will allow you to be to get notifications on new streams and videos. Okay, so that's what's gonna be going on with that. So please go check out Discord and take a look at that. Okay, and that's it for announcements. Let's go ahead and move on to the map. So I went ahead and added a link to the template. Hopefully you've clicked that and you've cloned and edited. If not, just follow along and watch. So first, I just want to mention the setup of the template so you know. The green squares are the FG or the add mode of the mask tool, okay? And the blue tiles are the BG or the background or anything that's created with the subtract mode of the mask tool, okay? So just keep in mind those two layer differences, so when you're doing the texturing and you're following along. So first thing I want to mention when you're adding terrain or biomes is to think about something like if you're in a world map and you're having multiple biomes or multiple kind of landscape, from deserts, mountains, hills, all that stuff. You're going to want to basically, in the beginning, kind of color code each terrain with a texture so that you know whether or not these kind of biomes go well together. For instance, you wouldn't put a desert next to an Arctic or the Arctic or a tundra or anything like that, right? So color coding your biomes right away is extremely helpful. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And remember, we're working with the Watercolor Battlemap Style. So if you click the O key, that'll open up the object tool. Remember, use shortcut keys because this is really going to speed up your process. So shortcut keys. If you don't know what the shortcut keys are, you can click this little icon right here and this will pop up. I also think there's also a shortcut key for it. Let me double check. Yeah, if you press K, it will take you to shortcut keys. So here's a nice little guide that kind of tells you what all the shortcut keys are. So I cannot stress enough, absolutely use shortcut keys, okay? That's gonna speed up your process. There's no magic bean when it comes to making a really, really good map in a very short period of time. All you can do is just cut down the time that it takes to make a good map, okay? So just think of all the things that you can do to cut that down. Shortcut keys is probably the best one that I can think of. So again, press the O key and then press the F key to open up the catalog. Okay, and that same thing is with the brush tool. If you have the brush tool selected and you press the F key, it'll open up that catalog, okay? So let's go to Watercolor Battle Maps here. Might be having an issue here. My catalog's not showing up. Okay, might have to refresh the page. One moment. Okay. Just going to respond to something in the chat. I know Philip already addressed it, but yeah, I mean, is the winter assets, I'm guessing you're referring to the one in Watercolor Cities? Okay, got back up here. Just going to make sure that that catalog is working. Sweet, there we go. Okay. Now I just want to go over the catalog real quick, just so you know how everything works. Left panel, this is basically the organization and what you're going to see in the catalog. Okay, you got the upload button, that's for your custom stamps. Okay, and you have a series of filters here, so just keep that stuff in mind. I also want to mention something important. Since we're only doing terrain and biomes, there's some helpful tags that can help you with that. There's one called terrain. Okay, and if you click that, only terrain stamps will pop up. And you also can click expand all, and you can see all your options for terrain, and that's what we're going to end up using for this first mountain. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom out real quick. Zoom back in, get to the position we want. Just so you know, you can zoom with your mouse scroll wheel, okay? And you can also pan by holding down your space bar, click, hold, drag, okay? So this is how you're gonna be able to pan and zoom in and out, okay? It's much easier than having to move things around, okay? So mountain, again, catalog, O key, F key. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a series of these kind of composite hills, okay? Remember, this is battle map, so we're not gonna make something very huge, right? We're just going to make it somewhat reasonable size and then put a little something on top of it, right? So we're going to go ahead and click the first one, and I'm going to scale it down, okay? You hold down Shift key, mouse scroll wheel, okay? That allows you to change the size, okay? I'm going to rotate it to where we want it. I'm going to place it down like this. Also be sure what layer it's on, layer 1, okay? And we're also going to scroll through the different kind here like this and pick different ones, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to stack these, okay? So I'm going to resize it, place it where I feel it might look good. Okay, let's see here. And this might take some maneuvering, just so you know. Let's see. That shape's kind of odd. Let's go with something a bit bigger or smaller actually. Let's go with this one. This will work great. And make sure that it's above this. So I'm looking and checking. It looks all right. I'm going to scroll through the next one. You're basically going to stack all these until you basically have a mountain. Okay. Put one there, and then we'll put another one, that smaller one, on top like this. This is going to be basically the apex or the pinnacle of the mountain right here. All right. You're going to select them all and kind of rotate them the way that you want them. Okay. That looks good. All right. Let's go to the next step. Once you've kind of placed that, by the way, I'm also using this green texture. It works just fine with these composite hills, okay? So I'm not going to worry about placing another texture until later, but we will get to blending, okay? So now you have your mountain, you've assembled it, right? And you've rotated it to where you want it. Now you're going to want to figure out where your light source is. So I'm just going to use the path tool like this and just kind of create where my light source is. So this is just a reminder where the light source is. Okay. Now I'm going to select all these and I'm going to group them. Okay. And don't forget to name that group. Whenever you create a group, I would just immediately rename it. So that way you know what it is, especially if you're going to have multiple groups on your map. So that's a huge pro tip. So rename. Okay, and we're going to call it mountain. Okay, press enter. It's been renamed. You can see it. The number next to it, 4, just means how many stamps are inside the group. Okay, and you can also rename it again if you want. You can also edit the group by clicking this button, and you can lock it just in case you have a lot of groups or a lot of stamps and you want to lock it so that way you don't accidentally select it. Okay, let's go ahead and unlock it. I kind of need it for right now. That's okay. Actually, let's lock it just in case I don't select it for now. We're going to go back to the catalog, go Objects, O key, F key, okay? And then I'm going to take the single stamps set, this green hill that the composite hill is made of, and I'm going to select it, okay? And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the brightness of these stamps and to create the dark side or the shadow side of the mountain. So the light's on this side. So that means all the hills on this side are going to be where the shadows are going to be. So first you're going to go to advanced settings, and you want to do this before you place it, okay? So that way the settings is with all the stamps that you place. And I'll show you what I mean. So you're going to go to advanced settings. Now if you don't see that, you might have to use your mouse scroll wheel to go down, okay? And if you still can't see it, you might have to change the magnification of your screen, okay? Because it might be zoomed in so much that it's actually kind of blocking out. So just kind of zoom out a little bit so that way you can see that option. Okay, you're going to go over to filters. There's placement and then filters, and then there's also transform. We're going to do filters, okay? And we're going to go to this brightness setting. right here. And we're going to drop it down. And it needs to be visibly darker than these stamps, okay? Now if you look closely, you can kind of see that it is darker. We can make it even darker than that. Let's go with 50. Just kind of keep and remember that number, okay? So now we're going to scroll through and we're going to place these stamps down. And this is basically the dark side, okay? So that you can see that. I can place another one here. And then just scroll through the various ones and kind of piece together your dark side. I'm going to go down. Okay, that looks fine. All right, connect these. All right, you'll have to go through all the stamps, select the ones that look good. Let's keep going here. This one works fine. One more should be okay. Sometimes this is just, sorry, it's a little bit of a slow process. Okay, that even might be too dark, but I think it's okay. All right. I'm gonna place 2 there, and we'll place a couple more. And I think I do actually have a guide on this on my profile, so if you go to my profile, I also provide a visual guide on how to do this as well. Okay, let's see here. Let me just double check to make sure the light's hitting against here. Here, this should be lit, this should be lit, but this side here and this here should all be dark. Okay, I don't think that's gonna work. All right, let's take a look, do that one maybe. One more there, and another one right here I think should be enough. That one right there should do just fine. Okay. Let's do a small one right there. I think that's right. Let me just zoom out and take a look. That does seem to be like the dark side, so that's good. Okay. And we can select all of these too if you want. You can group them. Okay. You can, oopsie, something happened there. That's not right. I'm going to select all of these ones. Okay. You can go to this hamburger menu and you can select group or just press the G key, right? So if you select everything, just press G key, it immediately groups it. You're going to see it right there. You can also rename from the hamburger menu, rename. I'm just going to call this dark side. Okay. That way I know what it is. And I'm just going to go ahead and probably lock it for now. Okay. So now you've got that. So the next part now is to add some more landscape to it. Okay, and what I would do is probably first let's fix these dark sides. They're a little bit dark. I'm going to open them back up. Everything gets selected when you first open a group. Everything gets selected. So kind of keep that in mind. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that brightness up because it does seem just a tad bit dark. And I'm going to also fix some inconsistencies with lines as well. Right here, it seems to be a problem. I'm going to select that particular one right there, and there's one right there as well. Sometimes you make mistakes and you just have to go over and fix it. Okay, that looks better. Okay, there we go. Was a little too dark. We can go ahead and lock that again. Okay. So now we have made the dark side, or where our shadow is going to be. Now we can go ahead and add some trees, bushes, other things like that. Okay. So let's go ahead back to the stamp tool, add the O key, press F key, open it up. Okay. And you're going to see that there's some rocks and stuff, but there's no foliage. So we can also add another tag if we want to. Let's close this one real quick. We don't need that anymore. My computer's going a little slow on lag. Okay. There should be a foliage tag. Let's go and see if I can find that. There we go. This foliage tag gives you all the various plants and trees. Extremely useful, so I recommend using it. Let's start with some large trees first. Okay. And let's also go ahead and check what size we're at. This is at 30. I'm going to open up one of these real quick and just kind of verify what the size is so I can stay within at least a scale range. These are at 40 and this is at 30. That's a 10 point difference, and that's okay. That's all right. This is technically a mountain, so let's go ahead and actually drop it down. It's not that big of a mountain, but big enough. So you have some trees. going to check the layer 1, make sure that it's going above everything. Okay, that looks good. There's your first tree. Okay, it's set to layer. We might change that. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. I don't want layer on, so no layer. Okay, and we're going to control those shadows manually when the time comes to do shadows. Okay, so we're going to place a couple, and the way that I like to do my trees is in clusters. Okay, so you place like a couple in a cluster of 3. 3 is a good number. Okay, so here, and here. Add a couple more here. All right, and then I also like to add, after I've added my trees, I go to the next step where I add some more. I add some bushes, some grass and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and just choose these bushes right here. Okay, I'm actually going to select all the trees. I'm going to show you a cool trick with that. You're going to go ahead with the selection tool. Okay, that's using the V key. Okay, and if I select this and go to the hamburger menu, there's a select option right here, and you're going to see 3 options: all stamps like this, all stamps from this set. Okay, if you select all from this set, it's going to select all those trees. Okay, I'm actually going to bring them up a couple layers. So I'm going to bring them to layer 2, or layer 3 actually, sorry. And then I'm also going to go back to the catalog, O key, F key, select the bush, and I'm going to put them at the layer number 2, because trees are taller and bushes are quite smaller and lower to the ground. So therefore they're going to be below trees. So if you're placing the bush, that way it goes below the tree, but also stays on top of these group stamps that I've put together right here, because they're at layer 1 and this is at layer 2. Okay, layers, super important. And I'm just going to single click, place them where I want them. Okay, and I like to do them in kind of little groups like I do with the trees. Okay, 3 is always a good number. Okay, and I'm also going to go down a size, bring up the size maybe. Let's take a look. No, that's at the smallest size. That should be fine. And then I'm also going to add some blades of grass. Okay, and we're going to place these. I'm going to place a couple of these around the edge like this. We're going to go ahead and just add some nice stuff here. Let's put a bunch underneath the tree here. Okay. And I'm also going to select all these just the way I just did with that hamburger menu. Okay. I'm going to select it like this, go to the hamburger menu. Okay. Let's go to select all from this set. And I'm going to turn the layer off as well, because I'm going to want to do that manually. Okay. Because I've selected my light source, and manual layer doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work exactly to this. So I have to kind of keep that in mind. Okay. All right, make sure all those shadows are off. I think also, did I turn all the bush shadows off? I think I did. Okay, just want to verify. All right, the next part comes the texturing. Texturing is super important. I love to use texturing for, let's actually do this as well. Go to select all, one moment, and I'll kind of explain texturing from this set. There we go, turn that off. Excellent. Okay. So with the texturing, what I like to do is use textures that blends the stamps in with this basic this texture right here. This is basically the ground texture that you're going to be painting over with other textures. So think of it as kind of your bottom layer, right? And you're going to select other textures to kind of blend, because you see the contrast here. You have this tree, and this is really green against this bright green here, and so we want to kind of blend that in. Okay, so I'm going to first blend all these stamps in with the ground texture that I have, and then I'm also going to paint in some shadows, or I could use the path tool, but we'll get to that last. Shadows is something I generally do last, so let's just go ahead first and add some textures. You're going to hit B key to go to the brush tool, press that F key to open up. Okay, and you're going to see all your textures here. I'm going to go ahead and use some various textures. One thing I like to do is to show dirt. Okay, so I'm going to use this clay or soil texture. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and use what's called the edge shape. Okay, and you're going to want to make sure that smooth is on, and you want to drop this to 3. Okay, the smaller the scale is, the smaller you want these to be. Okay, so since we're working with such a small scale here, you're going to want to go with the most minimum amount of edginess in the feature size, okay? We're also going to drop down the size a little bit as well, okay? And then we're also going to drop the opacity. Whenever you're kind of using this edgy brush, there's no softness, okay? It's going to work like a hard brush. And so the higher the opacity is, the less blending. So if you drop the opacity, if you bring it down to something like 20 or 30, really depends on the texture. Let's just stick with 35 for now, okay? It's going to be really, really, really hard, and there's going to be no softness. So you have to drop the opacity down quite a bit, okay? And I'm going to take that brown, and I'm going to start with just doing it. Let's make sure it's set to the FG, by the way. This is green, okay? And I'm going to just do one stroke and just kind of see how it looks, like this, okay? That looks okay. I think I'm going to drop the size down to make it even smaller, okay? And blending is kind of a multiple stroke game, okay? So you're going to be doing multiple strokes at a low opacity, okay? And I like using this edgy brush because it creates these nice little edges like this. It looks kind of nice, okay? And at first it looks kind of odd because it's not blended very well with the green, but we'll get to that. First, we're going to start with our large swath areas with this texture, okay? And you can even put some of it on the hill if you want, like this, some here, like this. And that's just because there's dirt everywhere. Okay, I'm going to put some here, just some random chunks, okay? And we'll blend those in, okay? Now you're going to drop your brush size down to something even smaller. I'm going to go with 4, okay? And basically you're going to just do single clicks like this around this edge. And what that does is it just kind of breaks up the transition between the green texture and the brown, okay? You're going to notice in the left-hand corner here that Inkarnate has conveniently left me a reminder that I should consider saving my work because I have so many changes, 290 changes. I'm going to quickly just finish up and do these edges, be a little risky, okay? I'm going to blend this and then I'll save, okay? And I'm going to talk about the importance of saving and refreshing the page, okay? Let's get this going. All right, this looks good. And don't forget to do it to the stuff that you have on the hill as well, okay? All right, nice. Okay. I think that looks all right. Maybe some here. All right. Oh, I didn't do that one up there. Naughty. Okay. Ooh, some over here. There you go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save my changes. 478 is an absurd amount of changes. Saving's going to go pretty quickly at first when you first make your map. It's because you don't have a lot in what's called your change history here. Okay? So just know that the more changes that you add to your change history, the slower saving your map and even loading up your map will become. Okay, so if you're starting to wonder, like, why is it that this map loads or saves quicker than others? It's pretty much that reason, okay? The more changes you have, okay? So keep that in mind. You're going to want to save, okay? And actually, after a certain number of saves, you're also going to want to refresh the page, okay? That's important because right now, Chrome has these limits on their tabs, and it can cause an internet timeout. And so just to kind of avoid that internet timeout, save and refresh fairly often. Okay, I have a general rule of thumb where I like to save after 100 changes or so. I know I just kind of went against that, so kind of do as I say and not as I do situation there, okay? But just remember to save often after 100 or so changes, okay? It's just a rule of thumb. You don't have to do that. It's just to avoid that issue of internet timeout, okay? As well. And remember to refresh the page because refreshing the page is the only way to actually clear this change history, okay? So refresh the page, clears the change history, and it will run probably a little bit quicker because the longer time that you spend working on a map without refreshing, the more and more you're going to create information on the map and cause it to slow down. So save and refresh. It's okay though if you don't, or say if you save every 300 or 400 changes, you're being risque, and that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to that next step I'm going to do. I'm going to add more texture to this square, okay? Right now you just kind of have these flat brown and kind of green texture. And so we're going to go into the brush tool, B key, which we're already in, and press the F key to go in the catalog. and we're going to see some textures that have a little bit more artifacts in it, okay, like this one right here, grass, light, dark, and this brown one right here. Now, when you're doing texturing, you're going to want to do less work instead of more work. So instead of spending hours of doing texturing, let the textures and the artifacts in the textures do that work for you. There's no need to do extra work. There's no need to spend an extra hour doing this intricate texturing when our textures can just do that for you. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Now, remember it's at the foreground layer, and just a quick pro tip. With shortcut keys, you can use the 1 key and the 2 key to flip between the FG and the BG. Okay, that's just a quick tip so that you can quickly shift between those 2 layers. So we're going to keep it on the FG because that's the layer we're on. I'm going to make sure that I have that texture selected. I should have this one, okay? And you're going to notice also that you might have to do a little bit of changes with the advanced setting. Because this is at the smallest scale, this is pretty small scale, you're also going to have to go to your advanced settings and change with the size. Okay, so I'm going to bring it down quite a bit. You'll see the preview shows up with a transparency, so that way you can kind of still see your map. Okay, now also keep in mind this caveat that when you scale down a texture, you're going to see that it's going to be a little bit more repetitive. Okay, you can see that a little bit here in the texture. The way to prevent that repetition is to go ahead and use the rotation slider. Okay, and that helps to kind of remove that, or at least kind of obscure that a little bit. So kind of pro tip, remember to size up so it scales up to the size of the stamps you're using, and to rotate to remove or obscure that odd kind of repetition in the stamp or texture. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to make this much larger and drop the size down, or the opacity down. So the size is up, opacity is down. And I'm going to go actually over the whole thing with it because I kind of like this texture. Okay, I'm going to put it over the whole thing. It's okay. Okay, and it's just, as you can see with that lower opacity, you can't see much yet. Okay, I'm going to go do another swath, another stroke, and put it here on top like this, just to give a little bit more texture to the mountain. Okay, and I'm going to do it one more time just to give a little bit more texture. Again, okay, there we go. And so now you have this nice kind of texture, and you can also go ahead and drop the size down and just kind of do it in the negative spaces if you want to make it pop out more. Okay. All right, I'm going to quickly wrap this up because we got to move on to the next biome. So I'm going to quickly add this detail in. Okay, there we go. So now you kind of have your mountain. Now the last part is this shadowing. Okay, and there are a couple ways to go about shadowing. Since we've been working on texturing in this particular tile, this mountain tile, I'll just use a texture. Okay, so you're going to open up that catalog and you're going to see that there is a cave shadow. I think there's also this stone shadow. I think both kind of work. It doesn't really matter which one you decide. Okay, just click that. All right, and again, with this one, we're going to go ahead and turn off the edgy brush. Okay, or actually you could keep it on if you want to show some edges. Okay, but let's also right now also figure out kind of where the sun is. So it's not just in the top left corner here. We also need to know how high up it is and what kind of shadow it's going to cast. Now, when you're doing shadowing, just know that shadows need to project away from the light source. So that means they're going to be being projected this way, like this. Okay? You can undo with the Alt-Z or the Control-Z, sorry. Okay? And we're going to actually use this. Normally I don't use this, but it should look nice because it might make the mountain look like there's some edges to it. So let's go ahead and just try one swath. So you're just going to hold down once like this. And you're never going to let go. You're going to create the initial shadow like this. Say it's going to look like this, okay, like this. This is going to, and you're not going to let go until you're done filling in that space you just created. Okay. This is the first bit right here, okay? All right, let go. Okay, and you want to do the same thing to up here wherever the shadows are. There should be some shadow right here, and there should also be shadows right here, okay? Because remember, we're casting away, okay, like that. And there should be some shadow here. Okay, that's your first initial stroke. You're going to add another stroke, okay? You're not going to let go, okay? So go ahead and go down again like this, and just start with it's kind of an outline like this, okay? Remember, don't let go, okay? We're getting the initial shape down, so that looks kind of nice. You can let go now and do the same thing here again. Add the shadows at the top of the hill here, or mountain. Add it here again, okay? And right here. Okay, great. And you can even add a little bit darker here, okay? And we're going to add one more, okay? We want to make it just a little bit darker, okay? We're getting that shape. It's looking nice, okay? Good, good. Go over here. We're going to go over here. All right, that's looking all right. Okay, let's see here. A little bit darker. Let's see here. I'm checking the darkness of this stamp. I'm going to add one more, okay? We're going to add one more layer. You can go with a higher one next time. Just go with maybe instead of 15%, just go with 30%. And that way you don't have to do as many strokes, okay? I caught my error there, and I just want to give you the heads up on that one. Okay, so I think that's good enough. So now you've created that shadow. Now you have these nice shadows that helps to give it some height, to give it some depth. The next step is anything within the mountain's shadow is going to have to drop its brightness, okay? Now, unfortunately, when you're doing the brush, when you're doing a brush, you can't paint over a stamp unless you flatten. So if you have any stamps that are in between the shadow and the light side, okay, like in the shadow and half here, you're probably gonna have to flatten that stamp so that way your texturing gets hit with it, okay? For now, I'm just gonna move it out of the way, okay? So that way I don't have to deal with it. I'm cheating, basically. And I'm just going to put some stuff in the dark side so that way you kind of know what to do. So here are the stamps in this dark side of the mountain. Okay, you're going to select everything in the dark side. Okay, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go to the advanced settings of the stamps and drop the brightness down so they're a little bit darker. So that way it looks like they're being affected by the shadow. Okay, let's go with let's say 70%. That might be too dark. Let's go 75, that should be enough. Let's take a look and make sure that there is a distinguishable difference, that this looks darker than this does, okay? And if it doesn't seem that way, then you might have to make it a little bit darker or make these brighter, that's up to you. That looks good to me, I'm okay with that. Okay, it looks like the shadow that's being cast here is a long shadow, which means it's either dusk or dawn, okay? So only elongated shadows are created by dusk or dawn, okay? Just keep that in mind, those long shadows that are cast. The ones that are gonna be like higher up, like noon, they're not gonna have these very distinguishable shadows. They're gonna be long, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing your shadows. Let's go ahead and take an overall look. Looks good. Let's go ahead and call this one good. Actually, no, let's go ahead and add the last shadows. Let's do that real quick. I need to make sure I select these ones. Okay, these should be fine. It's like this one. And I'm just going to do the big ones for now. And I'm going to go over to Object. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and cast the shadow out just to see what it looks like. It's like, looks a little big. Let's go with something smaller. Something like that. And let's go ahead and drop the opacity. And remember that your shadow should be relatively the same darkness as the shadow that you've painted. So kind of keep that in mind. Let's drop it down a bit more. Change the blur, and we're going to have to drop this down. And make sure that your shadows are not disconnected from your stamp. So you're going to have to make sure that they're at least close enough to the stamp to where they're not broken off from the stamp. Okay, that's super important. Keep that in mind. And I'm just going to go ahead and select all the plants and bushes, basically. And just go ahead and add a slight shadow to those as well. So we're going to select all from this set. Going to add object, okay, and I think overall the default object shadow looks fine with that. And we're going to do the same thing with these tufts of grass, okay? Just select all from this set, go to shadow, object, perfect, okay. Now we're going to zoom out and just take a look and make sure that that kind of creates a little bit of depth. And I think that does, and that's fine. Okay, that looks good. I'm not going to add any more details, but you can add more. There's rocks, rock formations, water, all these other things. But this is just kind of the basics of putting together a mountain. So I'm going to save those changes and move on to hill, okay? Hey White, how's it going? Great to see you. I'm really glad that you're here, by the way. Okay, let's move over to hill. We've made the save. We're gonna do hills, okay? And don't forget, this is on the BG and not the FG. So you gotta click your B key to go to brush, 2 key to go over to BG, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and pick a texture from the catalog, F key, jump over. We're making a hill, so I'm gonna go ahead and choose one texture that I like. I'm gonna use this dark grass because I already have this light grass here. I'm gonna make sure that my opacity is 100%. I'm gonna show you guys a quick way on how to fill up your whole map, okay? You can use this rectangle shape right here and just go like this, okay? And you've covered the whole thing, and you just press the apply key. You can press A or enter. I'm just gonna press enter, okay? And it covers up that whole section. So this works as kind of an alternative to a fill bucket. We don't have that, but you can fill quickly with just by using that rectangular shape, okay, like this. And if I just pressed enter, every single one of these things is gonna get covered, right? So if I press enter, you're gonna notice that everything on the BG is gonna go to that one texture, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm gonna go ahead and press Alt or the Control Z, undo that for now. So it's super important that you kind of keep that in mind. And I might have accidentally pressed it again. Okay, here we go. Also, I'm gonna delete this guide. I don't really need it anymore. Or you can keep it and move it over to each one. It's up to you. Okay, so the next one is hill. And the way that I do my hills is I'm gonna go with a purely texture technique instead of going with stamps. Okay, so I'm gonna make what's basically a soft hill. I do think I have a guide for that as well on my profile. Go ahead and check the stream chat and look for that guide. I think it's, if you just type in hill in the search, it'll pop up there so you can find it, okay? So the way I'm gonna do my hill is I'm going to just paint it in, but the first thing I wanna do is I'm gonna place some stamps to use as kind of like an anchor point, okay? So I'm gonna place a tree. Let's go with something different than what I normally did. Let's go with this tree instead, okay? All right, and if you don't see the preview right away, if somehow the preview disappears, I've noticed that if you hold down the space bar, that preview will pop back up. I'm not sure what causes that, and that bug has been documented, but we'll get that fixed, okay? But just kind of keep in mind that if you don't see your stamp, just hold down the space bar, pan, and it should pop up, okay? I'm sure that happens to some of you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna have basically a hill with a tree that's growing on top of it, okay? So here's my tree. Okay, I've placed that there, okay? And I'm also gonna want to control the shadow of that, because that's gonna determine where the hill's gonna be. Because the soft hill, instead of these hard edges like this, a soft hill isn't gonna have these hard line edges. They're gonna be really soft, okay? So what I wanna do is change it over to object so that I can control it, okay? So I select object like this, and we go to this object, customize object shadow. Here are the options here. And I'm gonna go ahead and change the blur. And I'm gonna move it to the side like this just to kind of see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna wanna drop down the opacity of it and maybe move this down. Let's move the shadow up. Okay, so the shadow's gonna be here. So this time the light source is right here going this way. As you can see, the shadow is projected into the top right corner. So that means the light source is in the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, so we have that, okay? And I'm gonna drop the opacity down just a little bit more on that shadow. It's a bit hard. That looks fine, okay? So now you've added that. Now the next step is to go over to your brush tool, B key, and in the recently used, we're using shadowing. I also wanna just real quick, pro tip, remember to save your textures to your favorites. If you are the kind of person who likes to use the same textures over and over again, don't rely on recently used, because the more textures that you use, there's only a certain number of textures that recently used will show in its preview up here. So after using a certain number of textures, it will remove some from there. So the way to avoid that is just to go over and kind of click this favorite icon, and you can click it again to remove it, and you'll notice here next to recently used is favorites, and there it is right there, okay? So if you have like a texture that you use a lot, make sure to favorite. And remember, to me, whenever you're editing a texture using the placement and these HSBC filters, you definitely want to favorite that texture, okay? Because if you don't, you'll have to redo those settings all over again, and that can be a pain trying to line up the texture, trying to change it to where it matches the texture that you used before. So remember to favorite textures, specifically ones too that you are going to change with placement and filters, okay? That's super, super important. Pro tip, remember that, okay? So now I have this tree here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and paint in B key. I've got that favorite selected, okay? I'm gonna make sure I have the right shape. I've got this shape here, the circle shape. I'm gonna bring the size down like this, and I'm also gonna bring the softness all the way up. Okay, so softness up, and I'm gonna drop the opacity. Okay, I'm gonna stick with something like 38. Let's just apply and just see what it looks like. I'm gonna undo that. I want it to be just a little bit higher. Okay, 50, that looks okay. Let's go, actually up one more. Let's go to 60 and just see where that looks. That looks just fine. Okay. So what you're gonna do now is you're gonna make the shape of your hill, okay, with just one stroke, okay? So I'm gonna have the hill be like this, okay? So you have your shape like that, okay? This is just your basic shape, okay? You don't have to go with a pure circle. We can go with something else if you want, okay? Let's go with something a little bit more awkward, okay? So something kind of like this, okay? This is the basic shape. This shadow right here is what's called ambient occlusion. It's just that light shadow that makes you know that it's separated from the ground. So there should be just a light shadow like this, okay? And this is going to be, like I said, ambient occlusion. And the next part is to add the shadow of this hill, okay? So over here is where you're going to get that shadow at, like this, okay? You're going to hold down and don't let go, okay? You want to do this in one stroke, okay? So you have this soft hill like this. Okay. And if it's too hard a line, you can always add in more with that green, okay? That's the best part. If you make a mistake, you can fix it. We're gonna add another stroke here to add some ambient occlusion, okay? So there should be a little line here, like that. So this kind of reminds you that this is where the base of the hill is, and this is the shadow. Okay, that's what that ambient occlusion is for. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to know where the bottom of the hill is because I added this darker line here. Okay, so kind of keep that part in mind. And remember, make sure that that shadow color is similar to the same opacity as this shadow that you've used with object shadow on this stamp. Okay, kind of keep that part in mind. Now, if this just seems really odd, this kind of shadow right here, that's okay. All right, we can go back to our brush options. We're going to go back to recently used. You'll see this dark texture here, right? Well, you can go ahead and bring that up, drop the opacity down, and at certain points like this, you can go over it to kind of break up that darkness. Break up that kind of hard, it kind of has this feeling of like a hard line. So kind of adding this texture back over it, that ground texture that we're using, that base texture, it kind of helps to kind of blend it in more, okay? And it looks awkward at first because we haven't added any other stamps. So you have to use other stamps to blend in to make this look good. So kind of keep that in mind. This is one of those times with a hill where you're actually making the shadow first. Normally I do light and shadow last, but if you're painting a hill, you definitely are going to have to do the shadows and the painting first, okay? All right. Okay. Thank you, White. I appreciate it. That tavern stream was one of my favorites. Okay. Let's go ahead and add some stamps now. So we've got this soft hill, kind of has this jelly bean look, jelly bean hill, okay? And we're going to add some more stamps to kind of blend it in. And I'm going to use some stamps that I've already have and recently used. I kind of want to speed this up because I still have a lot more to do, and I am taking quite a bit of time. I'm going to drop these down to layer 0 to make sure they're a layer below this one. Okay, let me just place one to make sure. Yep, that looks about right. Okay, I'm going to drop down to size 1 more. Let's go to 20. And we're going to place a bunch of these. Okay. All right. Just kind of place them in those bunches, then drop that size down again. Okay, now you have some smaller ones and keep them in clusters. Okay, there's this issue, I call this monotony of size issue, where if you have all these bushes or tufts of grass being the same size, it looks really odd. Okay, so by fixing that problem, you just use the scale, drop it down 10 points or so, and then just add a little bit more around like that in these kind of clusters. That really kind of helps break up that problem, makes it look a little bit more natural. And don't just put them on the hill. Don't forget to put them on the ground as well, not just on the hill. Okay? And place a couple in the shadow. And just like we did in this panel over here, you're going to want to make sure you drop the brightness with these. Okay? So we'll get to that. Let's just go ahead and finish adding a little bit more grass tufts out on the outside. And again, see how it all looks weird being that small size. You add that in, break it up. Okay. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and quickly drop the brightness of these stamps just to get that over with. Okay. All right. We'll set it to object, and then we're also going to drop the brightness down. Okay, that looks about right. Looks good. Okay, I like that. Now I've also got some brown in from this tree right here, and that pops out against this, so it would be good for a sense of continuity to add a little bit, to add a brown texture or a dirt texture, so that kind of complements the bark of this tree stamp. So B key to the brush tool, F key, okay? I'm going to use a different ground texture this time. I'm not going to use this flat one right here. I'm going to use one with a little bit more artifacts. It's got some stones in it, so ground, simple, and intense. I'm going to select that. You're going to want to go to placement and mess with the size. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to drop it down just a little bit. It's not at a ridiculously small scale. That tree is quite big. So we just want to drop down the scale a little bit. Let's go with 57%. That's fine. And we can also rotate it if you want. Okay, and we're going to go with a soft brush this time instead of using edgy. Okay, I'm going to show you blending with a different brush option. So this is with that soft brush. Remember, when you were doing your regular circle shape for blending, you're going to want to have your softness all the way up. You don't want hard lines, okay? So softness all the way up, and make the opacity about 30. Let's go ahead and do a stroke and just kind of see how it looks. That seems to be okay. Let's go up a little bit more. We want to do less work, not more work, so let's drop the opacity, bring the opacity up. Let's go 57, just see how that looks. Okay, or 47, sorry, not 57. Let's do 55, add that stroke, looks good. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and start at the base of the tree stamp. So like this, go ahead and add that on there, okay? And I'm gonna put it basically underneath all the stamps, okay? Just so there's a little bit of dirt, okay? Again in here, a little bit here. And you can put a little bit in the shadow, and if it's too much, you can re-shadow again, okay? That's all right. So we've added some brown in there, and I'm just gonna add a little bit in the negative spaces. And the negative space is basically anything that doesn't have a stamp, okay? So like this is negative space, this is negative space, okay? So whenever I'm saying negative space, at least you know what I'm talking about, okay? All right, so I've added a little bit of dirt, and I want to add it, a lot of it at the base, okay? And you're gonna want to drop that size down, drop the opacity just a hair, and you don't have to do this, but I like to do this. Again, it's just to add little dots, and that basically is a transition between the base green, that dark green texture, and the brown texture that we're using, okay? This is completely optional. You don't have to go about doing that, okay? As you can see here, the edgy brush works just fine for this as well, okay? But I like to do this. It's just my personal technique. You don't have to. Okay, so we've added that, add some transition. Hill looks a little nicer, still looks a little odd. We might add in a couple more things to kind of fix that problem, and then we're gonna save. Let's just actually save now, being it's so many changes. Oops. All right, sweet. And don't forget, if you have any questions, to go ahead and ask our moderator, official moderator, Philip. Mad wizard when it comes to mapping, so I definitely would recommend asking the questions there in the chat. All right. Okay, let's get back to this hill, okay? All right. We want to add some final things real quick, okay? To just kind of add in more blending with this hill. Okay, let's take a look here. Got that tree there. sure it's in the right place. Put it over here a little bit more. And we're going to add just one more texture just to kind of beef things up a bit. And I'm going to add kind of this fallen leaves right here. Okay. Actually, there's some red in there. Then that doesn't make any sense. Let's go ahead and kind of scroll through here. Don't want to take up too much time. Let's just take a look. Let's go through and see what our options are. I'm going to go ahead and use this ground detail here, and I'm just going to fill that in with the rest of the negative space. Okay. Oopsie, that is way too big. I forgot to do the size. I'm getting carried away now, aren't I? Okay, and rotate again. Okay, and we'll bring the size down, or the opacity down. Okay, I'll go ahead and fill in some of these spots here with this texture just to give more difference between this hill, to tell the difference between this hill and the ground. Okay, because it kind of just looks like a weird black jelly bean shape. So what you want to do is make sure that there's a difference between the ground that's on the hill and the ground that the hill's on. Okay, it just kind of makes it slightly different. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. That looks fine to me. That looks good. You can add more stamps and details as you go. Okay, and you can even kind of overlap stamps at the base of the hill to cover that line if you feel that it doesn't look good. I'll just give you a quick example. Just kind of move some around, put them on the line here, so that kind of breaks that up. See, there's that option. Let's go ahead and move on to river. Okay, I'm going to save these changes, and I'm actually going to refresh because we've done quite a few changes. Refresh the page. We'll move on to river. Whew. I better speed things up because it's taking a little longer than I thought. Only 2 things in 1 hour. Yikes. Okay. So the next one is going to be river. And there are multiple ways that you can go about doing your rivers. You can use add mode, subtract mode, or basically the mask tool. You can texture it, or you can use the path tool. Okay, I think I also have a guide on how to do rivers with the path tool. So go over to my profile and check that out. It's going to be the exact same method that I'm going to show here. I'm just going to use the path tool here. Well, actually, no, let's not. Since I have that guide, let's go ahead and use the mask tool, because I think this is the majority of people who are probably going to end up using it. So let's stick with that method. You're going to go with the subtract mode of the mask tool, because this is add, as you can see here, right here, that I've kind of created my river shape. So let's go ahead and undo that. So make sure it's the subtract mode if you're following along with this. And most of the time when you're making bodies of water, you are going to use the subtract mode. Okay, but you can use texture, you can use the path tool, but from what I understand in the majority of maps I see, most people are using the BG as kind of their rivers and their bodies of water. Okay, so the first thing about rivers is you have to know where they start. They start in the mountain, so that requires a mountain. Since this is battle maps are scaled in real close and they're not scaled out most of the time, because it's a battle map. It's not a city style. It's not a world map. Battle maps are small. They're going to be up close, zoomed in and close. So when it comes to river, you don't have to worry about its entire path, where it starts and where it ends. You just need to do a segment of it, because it's probably going to be a region, right? Okay. So one thing you gotta know about rivers is that they meander, okay? And meandering is caused by the river's current pushing sediment, and that's gonna be like rock, pebble, that kind of stuff. It's pushing it up against the bank and causing it to erode, okay? And that's what causes that kind of S shape that's called meandering, and I'll quickly just show that real quick. Meandering looks like this, okay? Now, one thing you need to know about it is that the larger the bend, the longer the bend, and I'll go ahead and show you an example. The longer the bend is, like this, that means the older the river is, because it takes longer for this U shape to be created by that erosion from the sediment smashing up against the bank, okay? So if you want your river to be really old, make those bends really, really, really long, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, since this is kind of a zoomed in one, we're gonna just show one bend of the river, okay? We're only gonna show one bend. So we're gonna just show this bend. Here's that shape, okay? just like this. I'm getting a nice bend in there. Okay, remember this is with the subtract mode of the mask tool. So you got a nice bend there. And we'll bring it in a little bit closer because we want to make it the majority of this panel. Okay, there we go. Give this nice bend. Okay, that looks fine. Let's just add a little bit more right there. Okay, so you have this nice bend here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and switch over to this texture as well. Make sure that it's selected. It should be on FG. Let me switch over. I'm going to fix that real quick. Oop. Uh-oh. What happened here? There we go. BG. There we go. Just want to select that. Oopsie. Okay. So you have your river here, okay? And the first thing you're going to want to do is there are several options. You can have your river have cliffs or kind of a ridge along the edge, or your river can just be flat like this. And this means there might be some shore along the edge here. We'll do a little bit of both. We'll have one edge of the river be shore, which is going to be the outside, this bend right here. We'll make this shore, and we'll make this part cliff, okay? So again, open up the catalog, O key, F key. I think there's already some right here, but let's just check the catalog real quick. Maybe we can use a different stamp. Let's just go with rock, okay? So we're going to just choose this rocky cliff right here, and we're going to go ahead and place it and line it along. And if it doesn't line up perfectly, that's okay. You can fill in. Okay, so just kind of keep that part in mind. I'm going to place it there. Okay, and I'm going to scroll through the different ones that are there and just kind of pick the ones that go well, that line up. Let's go with this one right here. That looks pretty good. Okay, just get it a little bit closer to make sure that they line better. And I can also add that one up here as well. Up here like this. Okay, and we'll add one here. Okay, so this is going to be the rocky side, this rocky ledge of your river, and this side right here is going to be shore. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and take, I'm going to lock this. I'm going to go ahead and select all these real quick. Okay, so this entire ledge here, I'm going to group it. Okay, I'm going to call it River Cliff. I got to speed this up. River Cliff. Okay, you're going to copy and paste, so that's going to be, I think it's Control-C, Control-V, or Shift, I think. Sorry about that. I accidentally dropped that river too, and I don't want that. So let's undo that. Oopsie, it's not the cliff. My mistake. Trying to get the river. There we go. Okay. And we're going to drop this a group below. Okay, so make sure it's beneath this one. And what we're doing is we're creating a little bit of depth. Okay. So we're going to put that beneath, and we're going to have to open it and rearrange it as well so that the stamps are lined up properly. So let's go with River Cliff. I think that bottom one, is it this one? Sorry. Oh, I accidentally did the river too. Delete that part. Didn't want to do that. I'll have to fix that later. Okay, so let's get the group that's below. Okay, that's this one right here. And you're going to want to open it up, so edit group. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the blend mode. That's right here, blend mode. We're going to go to luminosity. Luminosity is going to pick up whatever texture is below the stamp. And I'm also going to go ahead and also change in the advanced settings the contrast. Okay, so that way it looks like it's kind of faded out and underwater, okay, as you would kind of expect. And then we're going to add some shoreline. We're going to do some texturing. We're going to go to the brush tool, B key, F key, add some shore here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and just use the soft brush for this one. So that softness is going to be all the way up, and we're going to drop the opacity and change the size. Make sure it's set to the FG. You can just press the 1 and 2 key, and we're going to put it here because this is the FG and this is the BG, okay? FG green, BG blue, okay? I'm going to put a little shore like this. Okay, I'm going to start with one stroke first, okay, to kind of create the general shape of the shoreline, okay? And then you're going to do it again, let go. Go down, press, do it again. You're going to see that the texture is a little bit more noticeable because we've added a second stroke, and we're going to add one more to get that edge nice. So there's a nice stroke there. You can kind of see the sand. Perfect. There we go. Okay. So you have that nice shore here. You have that rocky edge here. Okay. And we're going to real quick add in some quick stamps. I'm just going to do this stuff real fast because we're running short on time. I'm going to go ahead and add some trees in here and some bushes. Let's go ahead and add this tree. Okay, put a tree there, put a tree there, tree on that edge. Make it a little bit smaller. Okay. And we're also going to put some trees here. I wouldn't put them too close in the sandy area. I put them a little bit more in the green area, okay? You can put one here overlapping, that's fine. And maybe one more smaller one right about there, okay? So you have your trees. We're going to add in some bushes as well. Drop that down a layer so it's below, okay? Same thing we did before, okay? Okay, put a couple there, a couple here, there, okay? A little bit smaller. Add a couple more. Okay. All right. Gonna do this quick. All right. All right. This texture, this grass looks a little plain, so we're probably gonna want to add a texture that's got something going on with it, right? So F key. Let's go ahead and pick. I kind of like this texture. So let's go with actually this one instead, right here. Okay. Again, don't forget to mess with the size to make sure you got the scale right. Opacity looks fine. Bring the brush size up. FG. Okay, go ahead and apply that so you can get a little bit more artifacts, a little bit more texture on your ground. That way you don't have to add any more stamps. You're letting the texture do that work for you, right? Okay, so let the texture do the work for you. There we go, nice. Okay. And this is going to be like a midday because all the shadows are kind of just directly down or a little bit to the side there. So it's close to midday or around that time, not exact, okay? Okay, so we're gonna quickly now texture in the river. And the way that I do rivers with texturing is I'm just gonna go ahead and choose this texture, this blue texture right here, okay? You've got it selected, and all you gotta do is just go to Filters, Brightness, and then drop it down. Okay, make it a little bit darker. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm gonna create the deep parts of it. So darker, the darker the water is, generally that means there's a little bit more depth, okay? Because less light can reach down to it. So the shallower the water is just a little bit lighter, okay? It's not an exact thing, but it kind of works as a small rule of thumb. Okay, make sure you got that BG selected with the 2 key, drop the size down, okay? Don't use the edgy brush with water, I don't recommend it, okay? Make sure you use that circular brush and just go in the center here like this and add in some darker texture here like this, okay? I'm going to do some single clicks, and I'm just going to do them in the center part. The center part is where the deepest part is going to be. Okay? Excellent. There you go. You have these deeper parts. Drop it down. Okay, and just add a little bit darker in some of these little areas here. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to do what I normally do, my little single clicks. You don't have to do that. It's just to kind of create a transition. There we go. Okay. One more step. We're going to add some stamps, and we're going to add some kind of like waves and stuff. So I'm going to check to see what we've got here for waves. So click it in, wave. Okay, we got some waves here. Okay, so the reason why we're going to add waves and stuff is just to create what's called the flow. All right, so when you look at this right here, it kind of looks like it's just a placid body of water. There's no movement. There's nothing to kind of show that there's movement. Okay. So the way to fix that is to add either texturing or stamps. Okay, I'm going to take these stamps and kind of finagle them a little bit. These are kind of meant to be ocean waves. That's not what these are designed for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with them in filters. Excuse me. I'm going to drop the saturation to 0, bring the brightness all the way up to 100, and drop the contrast to 0. Okay, so now what you have is kind of like this little hint of white, which I kind of like. And it's a little too contrasty. There's a little too much going on here. So I'm going to drop the opacity. Okay. And I'm going to do one other thing too. There's this transform tool right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just change the width of it just a little bit and maybe a little bit of the height. Okay. And I'm going to drop the opacity down just a little bit more. Okay. So now that I have that, I'm going to place this. Oopsie, I forgot I don't have the right selection. So I accidentally, just so you know what mistake I made, I had only groups in the selection tool selected, so I could only select groups, so I couldn't select this. Don't do that. It's easier just to have everything select to all, so that way if you're like, ooh, I can select that. So just know that there are various options in selection. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and place this down. I'm going to rotate it, and what it is this is going to represent motion. Okay. So I'm going to go back in, make sure that I have all the other stamps selected, and I'm going to piece these together to kind of create the motion of the river, okay? All right, I'm going to put this one over here like this. I'm going to put this one over here like this. Okay, and it looks like that one's gonna go off screen. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna flatten that. Actually, that won't work. Let's just put it there. Okay, and it's okay to also change the size as well with these. So a little bit smaller ones is good too. So I'm gonna add some small ones like this. And I wouldn't put them parallel. So if you're gonna have a wave here on this side parallel to this one, I would not have it directly parallel to it. I would have it off a little bit so you have this negative space where these two don't connect, but it creates a continuous line, right? If you're gonna do that same thing with another one, don't make it parallel exactly, okay? So like I'm piecing it together like this, and it's kind of parallel this negative space. Okay, it just looks better, because if you were to do it, like make this right here, put it together, and then start putting it all the way along, you'd have these two parallel lines, and it start looking like a wagon track, and you don't want that, okay? So just kind of keep that stuff in mind. So there's that negative space, okay? So now you have a little bit of flow. Okay, now you kind of know. So we're gonna add one more thing. I'm just gonna add a rock that's gonna be on the top, okay? I'm gonna make sure it's at full opacity, put it at the top here, and put it down right on top of this, so it kind of looks like that this rock is creating this kind of turbulence right here. Let's put it right there, maybe. Right there looks good. Okay, so it kind of looks like there's some turbulence here, so now you know what direction it's going in. So you're not like, well, is it going that way or is it going this way? Adding that rock and then the trail of turbulence or white water that it creates kind of will help signify which direction your flow of your river is going to be, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, it's super important. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing. There's so many more things you can do to your river, but I'm not going to go with that. You could add a bunch of things underwater, just like I had these cliffs underwater using luminosity and dropping the contrast. You can add all kinds of rocks, logs, stumps, whatever you want. You could even include a rock texture that's down here or along the edge here to kind of create a better transition between this sandbar and here, okay? There's a lot of different things you can do. Unfortunately, I've been taking way too long. So, oh wait, there's an underwater section right here, so that's perfect. We'll go over that and you can apply that to here, okay? Let's go ahead and save 184 changes. We're gonna go to forest. I'm gonna speed this one up. Forest is pretty easy, kind of self-explanatory. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're gonna first pick our base texture. Let's go with dirt, okay? Let's just go with a dirt texture, and that way I can paint my grass on, okay? And don't forget that little trick there, just go use this and make sure it's set to the right layer. Because it's blue, it's BG, so all I gotta do is just press enter, boom. My entire square is basically dirt, okay? So let's go over to the catalog with the objects, O key, F key, okay? And we're going to go ahead and choose a different one. We're going to choose coniferous trees. Let's go to 100%. Just see what it looks like. Okay. And now with a forest, now if you're doing a battle map, it's going to be, there are multiple ways that you can kind of run your battle map with a forest area. There are two ways. One, which is an easier way and a quicker way, which is just to create a glade. And a glade is an opening in a forest where sunlight can penetrate. Okay. That's all that a glade is, and a glade is a great place where you can put all kinds of interesting points of interest, a ruin, a temple, a cavern, a hill, a village, whatever, okay? So glades are really, really great for that. If you're just running a pure a forest where there's no structures whatsoever, you're just running through this thick, dense forest, and you don't want to have structures and you don't want to have a glade, then I recommend this trick, and that is to go ahead and grab your stumps, okay, and just place a bunch of stumps on the ground, okay? So this is basically where your trees are going to be, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, okay? This is where your trees are going to be, okay? And we're going to go back to that conifer tree here, right here, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to go into your shadows, turn them off, okay? You don't want shadows on. You're going to go to filters in the advanced settings. You're going to drop the brightness to 0, and then you're also going to change the opacity. Okay, so now what this represents, and make sure it's a layer above as well, above the stamp, so that way the shadow registers on the stump. Okay, that's super important. You don't want the shadow below because that will look really weird. So what this basically, this represents is the tree, okay? So this way you can place down your stamps on it like this, okay? And it looks like that this is actually the trees, okay? So these represent the foliage of the trees, but you can still see the forest floor that your players are running on about. But you will notice one thing, unfortunately, is that these these shadows will overlap and kind of create these darker sections, okay? I just want you to keep in mind that. I haven't found any workarounds to make it to where that doesn't happen. We could select all of these and try a blend mode. So just select all from the stamp and the hamburger menu, and we could go through the various blend modes to see if maybe they'll interact better, but I haven't found one. But we'll just take a look just to verify. Doesn't look like it. So there's no blend modes that will help to kind of blend those in, unfortunately. You can drop the opacity a bit to kind of make it less distinct. That's the only thing I can think of, but that is one method you could go about. Okay, the other way again is just the glade. So this is just that method. Okay, and if you're running a campaign like this, you can kind of, or running a battle, you can kind of make sure that your characters can run around and they won't be obscured by the tree like this, like you have right here, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. We're gonna wanna go ahead and quickly add in some textures. I'm gonna use this nice texture right here, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and use the edgy brush because I like the edgy brush. And I think 5 should be okay because this is kind of scaled up a bit. And we're gonna wanna drop that opacity. Again, edgy brush means, whoa, okay? So you're gonna want to drop the opacity. We're gonna check that size. Looks good, okay. And we're gonna do one stroke. It's gonna be on the BG, I believe. Let's take a look. Okay, let's drop that size down a little bit more. Okay, and we're just gonna apply it like this. Okay, put it around everywhere. Okay, and you don't have to worry about dirt because it's already our base texture. That's the beauty of it, is that we've created this base texture, and all we have to do is just add the grass texture to the ground, and that's it. Okay, so we're applying this. Looks good, looks good. Leave some of the, don't want to cover up all that dirt, okay? So make sure you leave some sections with a little bit of dirt. Okay, looks good. All right, and we're also going to add in some stone. So this is a slight suggestion of civilization, unfortunately, but I'm going to add it in there anyway, just so that we can add a little road, okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and apply it here. Let's check the size. I think that looks right, and I'm also going to rotate, okay? And we're going to apply just one stroke first just to see how it kind of looks. That's fine. Let's go up a little bit more. 50% looks good. I'm just going to go ahead and create a little road. Okay, it's just for the purpose that you can kind of see what's going on. Okay, so you got a little road here. Okay, and with the road thing, have some sections be more visible than others, okay? Because if it's a road in the woods, it's probably going to be covered in leaves. It's going to be covered in foliage. There's going to be grass everywhere, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. You don't want like this perfect road. Otherwise, it won't look like it's aged and weathered, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind when you're applying it. All right, I'm not going to worry about shadows for here, but you can see, again, that these kind of just represent the foliage so that you can walk around and they don't obscure your player. 52 changes, going to go ahead and save. Sorry, I'm kind of speeding things up just a little bit. Hey, Anthony, it's great to have you here. Awesome. Sweet. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We're going to do desert. Okay. All right, we have a nice panel here. Let's go ahead to the brush tool, B key, press that F key. And if you don't want to scroll through, don't forget you have this nice little search field here. You can go ahead and put desert if you want. And if you don't see that, put sand. It's the next best choice. Looks like there's a sand texture right here. Perfect. And I'm going to bring the opacity up and go ahead and use that rectangle shape, okay? Because that is kind of the fastest way to do it. So let's just put it down here, press enter. That entire section is now a desert, okay? All right, and if you're not satisfied with where the artifacts are, don't forget you can resize, rotate, and change the offset so that maybe you want the artifacts to be in a different arrangement. Okay, we're gonna go to the catalog, press B key, or I'm sorry, O key, then F key. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the catalog here and kind of just take a look at the various options I have here. Okay, let's go with terrain, okay? All right, so we don't actually have a lot of desert terrain options for this, but that's where that blend mode option comes in handy, okay? Let's go ahead and choose this one right here. It's called Composite Hill Brown, okay? And we're gonna create some elevation, okay? I'm just gonna place one down for right now, okay? And I'm gonna go to the options right over here, sorry, to blend mode and go to luminosity. And what you're gonna notice is that it catches the texture that is below the stamp. And if it doesn't match, you can go over to your advanced settings and change your brightness. And you can increase your brightness or drop your brightness, okay? But I'm gonna increase the brightness so that it at least is around the same brightness as the texture that I'm using, okay? Really useful, okay? All right, we're gonna add one, put it down right here, okay? And I'm also gonna maybe just drop the opacity a little bit so that it kind of looks like there's like wind kind of obscuring some of it. So it's kind of picking up the texture beneath it even more, and it's obscuring it because heat has this way of obscuring when you're looking at objects, okay? So that heat effect, you can create that in a desert by just kind of dropping the opacity a little bit of this stamp. I wouldn't recommend doing it with all your stamps, but particularly for the terrain, okay, it might work. And so I'm going to drop it down. It's obscured by, let's just say there's a windstorm, okay, or a giant sandstorm, okay. So I've applied that, add that there, and we're going to want to change the luminosity, and we're going to take some shapes and just kind of put them together. Okay, let's add another formation right here. Okay. Normally I'd put oasis in here, but I've been doing oasis for all my deserts, and I just don't want to do that over again. So instead, for this one, instead of an oasis, we'll just do some slightly elevated areas. Okay. We don't have any dunes yet that I know of, so we're just going to use these for now. I'm going to go ahead and drop the opacity even more on this one to make it even more obscured. I'm going to drop it down, and I'm going to put it on top like this, okay? So you kind of have this strange bean-shaped kind of like hill in the desert. Okay, and we're going to change up the size a bit because this is going to be where our POI is going to be when we do our settlements. So for those of you who just showed in, just so you know, next month, what I'm going to be doing is adding settlements to every single one of these, including all the other ones. So the first step was this month to kind of create the terrain. Next month, I'm going to go ahead and add settlements to every single one of these panels. So there'll be settlements in the mountain, this hill here, and all the other ones that I've done this month. Okay, I think that's a good order of operation. Terrain first, and then you kind of use those terrains to build your settlements, whatever it might be, city, village, lighthouse, whatever. That obviously just depends on the style that we're using, okay? So let's go ahead, right back to our desert, get that started. Go ahead and place the stamp where you want it, okay? Like this, and we're also gonna go back into the catalog, O key, F key. All right, and I'm gonna expand all, kind of take a look at my options and kind of see what we have here. We don't have a lot of desert stuff, it seems like, so we just have to be, kind of just be ingenuitive and look at what we got. Let's take a look here. Let's check out our options here. I'm gonna go ahead and use these, since we're in the middle of a windstorm, I'm gonna use these clouds right here as well to kind of create this effect that they're kind of a windstorm. I'm just gonna place one down real quick, just so I just have it there later, and I might wanna change the brightness. There we go. I kind of like it better that way. We're gonna put that there for now, okay? So maybe when we do the settlements next week, or next month, sorry, don't do next week, next month, maybe we can put like a desert settlement on top of this kind of hill right here, and it's trying to survive against this crazy, sandstorm that's just battering against it, okay? So we'll create that kind of landscape that we want, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and just use this shape again just shift through. Okay, just take a look at my shapes. Let's use this smaller one like this. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and place that here. So this is where what you have is like a series of these kind of rocky, sandy kind of cliffs, and you have like the sand storm going in between this, like this crevice right here and around here. So this storm is battering against this. Okay, and we might want to make it just slightly bigger. This is a battle map. This is not watercolor cities, so we'll increase the size because we want our settlement to be somewhat large. Okay, so let's just go ahead and place this, make it much, much larger because this is a battle map and not a city map. Okay, here we go. So we've got that set up. That looks nice. Let's go ahead and create our kind of storm a little bit. I'm going to push this off to the side here. And I'm going to just use a couple of these. Okay, let's go through some of these to make it look like we've got a nice desert storm going on here. Okay, let's drop this one size down, put it in between this crevice here. Okay, and we'll put one here. Nice. Okay, so we got our sandstorm here. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more texturing. This texturing is like really bland. If you kind of look at it, there's not much going on there. So let's go ahead and go through our textures and see what we can use to kind of add a little bit more a desert feel to it. I'm going to go ahead and look at our options here, and I'm going to go ahead and just use this same texture that I used before and just kind of look at the size and see what artifacts are in it. I kind of like that. At least you can kind of see more artifacts. And I'm going to rotate that texture as well. Okay, like that. And we're going to apply it again because there's a little bit more artifacts in there, and that's kind of good. Let's just make sure that it looks good. We'll apply it. Okay, I'm going to add that there. Okay, yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, and I'm going to go back with this texture again, and it kind of looks like it's flat. So I'm going to go over the base of where this is and just kind of get rid of that so it looks like it's separate. Okay, so you've the top of this, and you can even go on the edges a little bit, go outside of it a little bit too. Okay, like this. There we go. And so that there's a bit of a distinction between the sand floor and kind of the top of these. Okay, and I would definitely take this landscape and group them together. Okay, and that way when it comes to adding the settlements, it won't get in the way. So let's go ahead and rename it desert cliff. Okay, all right, and we're not going to add a whole lot of vegetation to it. Instead, what we're going to do is just do one last little thing. I'm going to go ahead and use that texture I just had, go into filters, change the brightness, and I'm just going to do real quick, kind of create a little dune thing real quick. I'll show you how to do that. I'm just going to go like this. Let's take a look. Way too dark, so let's drop the opacity way down. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of create these S-shaped wiggles. Okay, that's as easy as it is. Okay, that's all you have to do is just kind of create these S-shaped wiggles. Okay, to kind of give that the dark side of that dune kind of look. Okay, all right, and we're also going to add that same thing along here to add some depth to our shadow. So we want to add what's called, remember, don't forget that ambient inclusion. Okay, I'm going to put my shadow, again, we're going to go ahead and just put the light source up here. So the shadow is going to be projecting to the bottom right corner because the light source is in the top left corner, okay? So kind of keep that in. And now what's really nice about luminosity as well is it picks up that texture, so you can fill in the shadow side as well on these cliffs, because what it's doing is it's making it a little bit darker because you're using that luminosity. That's super important, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and kind of create the shadow of these kind of plateau rocks that are on the sand here. Don't forget, I'm also factoring in the shadow from that top other segment. So that's like this little nodule right here. Okay, and don't forget, you also want to put it here as well. Okay, so we're going up and across like this. Okay, so you have that nice shadow. Don't forget that ambient inclusion, go all the way around. Okay, up here and here, all the way around, because now you've got that depth. And we're going to add a little bit more ambient inclusion here. I'm going to increase the opacity to a little bit higher so it's a little bit more noticeable here. There we go. Get that nice dark hard line there. That's good. And there, okay, great, okay. So now you have this nice little segment here where you can put in your settlements. Hello, Brian. Hello, Jeremy. Kimberling. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Awesome. Okay, we just wrapped up desert. Okay, we're not going to worry about vegetation because this is a desert. There's not going to be a lot of vegetation. We can focus more on vegetation when it comes to adding the settlements to that part. So let's just go ahead and save and move on to Tundra because we are running short on time. I don't want to keep our good moderator Philip here up too late. So we're going to quickly save, move on to Tundra. I'm going to try to speed up these last three as quickly as possible. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to Tundra. Remember, this is going to be the FG. It's green, right? So you're going to go to the mask tool, M key, right? Press add, okay, or the A key. Let's just quickly get over that. A key and D key, A key, D key, right? So just so you understand that. Let's go to brush tool. We're going with the FG, remember, because this is going to be, excuse me, green. So let's go straight into the catalog, F key, and we're going to look for snow. Okay, and if there's no snow in there, don't worry. We can always make one, and that's pretty easy. And we're just going to go ahead and use this stone bright. Okay, and all we're going to do is just go to filters, drop the saturation, and we're going to increase the brightness. Okay, so it has that snow look. And I'm also going to go to placement and change the size because I want all those artifacts to stick out. Now you're going to notice that they're really, really repetitive. Don't forget, just rotate, and that kind of helps that. Okay. All right, we're going to go with our rectangle shape. Again, we're just going to fill this whole area up. Remember, we're just using a base texture that all other textures, for those of you who are, oopsie, we have to have that opacity up. For those of you who just walked in, the first thing you do is you just apply your base texture in which all other textures will be applied on top of, okay? That base texture makes your life easier in many ways. It labels your area when you first start so that you know that's a tundra. It also basically color codes your world map so you know what biome it is. And also the base texture is great so that when you apply other textures, that texture works well. I just want to say that with most areas on your world map, brown or dirt is the best choice first as your base texture. I didn't do that here with this one because I just want to distinguish the FG from the BG in each panel, but dirt is generally your best base texture. Unless you're going to be like in a tundra or a desert, then obviously sand is going to be your base texture, snow is going to be your base texture in a tundra. But when it comes to like a mountain, a hill, a river, a forest, a lake, when it comes to your land or your FG, you're probably going to want to use a dirt texture. So that way you can put grass over it or sand over it or whatever, okay? So always remember to keep track of your base texture, make sure it works well with the biome that you're going with. So we got tundra, okay? Tundra, we're going to go ahead and place down some trees. Tundra doesn't have a whole lot going on. There's not a lot of vegetation. What little vegetation there is has to survive these very, very cold temperatures. There are trees. So we're going to go right in to the object, and we're going to go ahead and just select a conifer. Okay. All right. And I don't see it here. I see it here in the shadows. So we might have to change that brightness to 0. And we're also going to change the luminosity to the blend mode to luminosity so it picks up that snow texture, because if you want your tree to look like it has snow, you're going to have to change that to luminosity. And you'll notice that it's kind of dark, so don't forget, just increase the brightness. That's all you got to do. Okay, and if you don't like it, if the contrast is too dark, these dark lines, you can just go ahead and drop the contrast like that so it kind of looks like there's a little bit more snow on it. Okay, kind of keep that in mind. Okay, I might have to make all those changes here. No, I didn't. Excellent. Okay. So let's go ahead and just kind of create a small wooded area, right, where our trees are going to be, and then we'll kind of create like a plain or this flat area. Okay, let's go ahead and move this over to here. Okay, and we're going to start with just the larger trees first, and then just drop the size down and just go ahead and put them down here and there. Okay, there's not going to be a lot of grass. In a tundra, most things are just permafrost or a frost. It's been frozen over, so you're not going to see a lot of grasses. Trees are really the only one that can kind of survive in a tundra. I mean, there are other ones as well, but trees are going to be the most noticeable and are going to be the most abundant in our catalog. Okay, so go with trees with your tundra. You can add other plants, but trees get a lot of their giant roots. They go deep underground. They can tap in and get water, so they generally can survive in a little bit more harsher conditions. Okay, because they got that large tap root that goes down and can reach those what's called an aquifer. And an aquifer is underwater streams that basically roots try to tap into. That's why it's called a tap root. It's trying to tap into a water source. So kind of keep that in mind. Okay, so we've added now our trees here. We want to add a little bit more to it. We'll add a little bit more action. That base texture looks kind of weird. So what we can do is go in and just kind of use these clouds that we had before. Let's just go ahead and copy and paste them down like this. And what we're going to do is just drop the saturation down all the way, increase the brightness, and maybe drop the opacity a bit. And we're going to use these to kind of represent kind of larger swaths of like heavier snow, where it's like a snow pile. Okay, so right here, we'll add that there. Okay, and we also want to factor in, I'm just going to put this in the negative space. Get some snow piles here. Okay, and just lock those up. Okay, make sure they're on a -5, layer 5, because I'm considering them a part of the terrain. I'm going to drop them to a layer -5, press the G key to group them. Okay, and that should work. Should have grouped them, did it? It doesn't look like a G key. Now they're grouped. And I'm also going to lock them. Okay, and I'm also going to rename it real quick. Just going to call it snow terrain. Okay. All right, next we want to do shadows. So we're going to select all of these stamps. I'm going to select them all. I don't want to select that, so it should be just the trees. And now we want to talk about shadows. So let's go ahead and use object. Okay, and I'm just going to go with basically this pretty standard. Just go have the light source be, let's do this here. Drop it. Let's go move it a bit this way to the right, and then drop it down a bit, and then change so that you can kind of see some of the shape of it. And drop the opacity down. Don't want it to be too much. Do that looks good. Okay. And when you're doing the object shadows, again, just remember that you don't want to accidentally have the shadow kind of be separate or broken from it. I'll give you an example. So if you're going in the shadows and I go like this, you'll notice that the shadow is disconnected. Okay? You kind of don't want to do that because it doesn't look good unless you're going to try to paint in an actual trunk, but that's not necessary. So let's just undo that real quick. And just adding in the shadows so that there's depth. Okay? Let's go into the catalog. Go into the catalog. Press the O key, press the F key. I mean, if you want to go to the catalog, you can. Okay, so let's go to the catalog and go ahead and just kind of pick some stamps that we want to add into the negative space real quick. I'm going to add in just some quick cliffs, I think, and I'm just going to use that luminosity blend mode again to kind of make it blend in, just so I had just a little bit more depth, and then we're going to call it good. Okay, for this one. Let's go over to filter. Let's go to, actually, let's go to blend mode. Just, oops, saturation, luminosity. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see here. Okay, I think it might have to bring the brightness up. Okay, and I'm also going to drop, well, actually, no, let's not do that. Let's just use the contrast for that instead of the opacity. So I'm going to change the contrast on this. I'm going to bring these down a couple layers, okay? And then I'm going to piece together, I'm going to zoom in here real quick, kind of piece together some slight elevation changes, okay? And if they don't look good, we can always change it up. So let's just add in some slight elevation changes here. I'm actually going to make them a little bit bigger. These cliffs are super small. Okay, normally I would add the cliffs first, but I'm going to put them in right now just to kind of add some slight elevation change so the panel doesn't look too boring. Okay, just go ahead and put them like this. It's a slight, very slight elevation change. Might even change the opacity just a hair too. Okay, just so it kind of looks like it's a little bit more into the covered in snow. And I'll go ahead and add in just a couple more, one more maybe, or two more. Let's just make like a nodule, kind of like an island maybe. Just go like this and just kind of piece them together to kind of create like a circle or kind of like a plateau rock, if you want to call it that, like this, okay? And yeah, you're gonna see some repetition here, okay? You can get rid of that repetition by just cheating. Put a tree there, right? Go ahead and add another tree, copy, paste, put it there, make it smaller, hide it like that, okay? So you can cheat, it's okay to cheat, all right? But just in Inkarnate, okay? I'm just telling you can cheat in Inkarnate, but don't do it anywhere else, okay? Okay, the last bit is just to add the shadows for the for these cliffs. So we're just going to take this same texture that we use, this snow texture, and I'm just going to drop down the brightness. Okay, so it's going to act as a shadow. Bring it down, soft brush, and I'm not going to do the edgy brush, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm also going to drop the opacity down so it's not too dark, and I'm just going to apply it like this. Okay, and just going to use the shadows of the trees to know where it is. So just kind of create this nice little shadow like that. Same thing here. I'm going to add a nice little shadow right here. Okay. Oh, and I just realized there's a stamp there, and that's why that's not showing up. So let's go ahead and delete that. Normally I don't use those for terrain, but that was silly. Don't know why I did that. Okay. Let's go ahead and bring the size down and then create that ambient inclusion part. So you're just going to go ahead and put it in the darker parts. And here, don't forget to go over some of the stamp as well, okay? So that way at least the stamp looks like it's darker. Okay, and don't forget that ambient inclusion. It's just along that ledge there so you can kind of see it. Same thing here, nice little ledge work. So you have that nice shadow, okay? Make sure there's a continuity in shadow. Shadows here. It's all being cast in that direction. I'm just using the same direction so that it's just kind of easier for me in the video. Okay, I think that's almost it. Let's just do one last bit where we're gonna go ahead and just use a color. I haven't used color yet, so you have texture here. We're gonna add a color, we're gonna go white, okay? And we're gonna actually use the edgy brush here, just for fun. We're gonna drop the opacity down quite a bit because this is a color. It doesn't have any texture in it. It's gonna be flat. I wanna catch some of the texture underneath. So I'm gonna bring the opacity down quite a bit, okay? And I'm just gonna fill in these kind of negative spaces, okay, with this. And already you can kind of tell that it's kind of too bright even at 26%. So we have to bring it down even more, okay? Let's go with 19, see if that's better. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So I'm gonna kind of create like, let's just say like a trail or something like that, that you can follow, okay? So I'm just kind of creating this nice little trail with the edgy brush, okay? Don't make sure not to accidentally go over your shadows, so kind of keep it away from those shadows, okay? All right, and I'm gonna do that single click thing, kind of break it up, and so this kind of adds this kind of feeling of like, oh, there's a little trail here that I can follow. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just make it to where there's a little bit brighter in some of these sections. Okay, like that, and there you go. There is your Tundra. All right, let's go ahead and save it. 2 more left, and we have about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Thankfully, the underwater one is gonna go so much quicker. And I think I actually have a guide on the underwater stuff. I'm gonna go and refresh the page as well and check over chat. Hello, C. Jade Watts, welcome. Awesome, I'm so glad there's so many people here. Don't forget to ask our wonderful map genius, Philip, moderator, if you have any questions, always glad to help. I'm gonna try to speed this up so we can get it done within the next 20 minutes. Don't forget, I also have a guide on how to actually make things underwater. My profile is included in the chat. Click that, I think it's somewhere at the top. Okay, click that and you'll see a guide. Just click underwater, or I think all my guides actually begin with the word guide. You can also go to the explore page. In the search field, just type in guide, and every single guide that I have on the explore page will show up, okay? I've specifically labeled them that reason so that you could actually find those guides more easier on the Explore page, okay? So underwater, how do we do that? Okay, underwater is super easy. Okay, I'm just gonna pretend this is ocean, okay? And you kind of want to create maybe like an underwater structure, and this is pretty easy stuff, okay? We're basically just gonna use these composite stamps, these hills, right? Okay, we're gonna create an underwater structure, right? We're gonna add these in. We're just gonna piece together what we did earlier in this first one. We're gonna create a mountain, okay? Only this mountain is gonna be underwater, okay? And you don't actually have to use, well, yeah, let's use that, that's fine. Let's go ahead and stick with that, actually. Okay, and we're gonna stack up and kind of create a, I don't know, maybe like a barnacle reef or something like that underwater. So let's go ahead and just take a look at the options here. Let's bring that down, put one there. Okay. Now we're also going to go ahead and change these to luminosity. So advanced settings, or I'm sorry, not advanced settings. Go to luminosity. Okay. And I actually am going to change things in the advanced setting. I'm going to change the contrast because water has less oxygen in it. So when you look at something in the water, your eyes are basically designed to see things in oxygen with more oxygen. When you're looking underwater, there's not as much oxygen. So that's why it looks blurry when you look underwater and you put on goggles. There's oxygen inside your goggles that makes you see it. So when you're looking at something underwater, there's going to be some slight distortion. And so I'm going to use contrast just like I did here with this. I'm going to drop that contrast down to kind of create that distortion that the lack of oxygen creates the things underwater, okay? And you can do more things too, like drop the opacity if you want to create more of that distortion due to the lack of oxygen underwater. It doesn't mean there's no oxygen, there's just a little bit. Obviously fish can see better underwater. They're more geared for lower oxygen than we are, okay? So this is basically going to be underwater like this, okay? And I'm just going to kind of create like maybe just like a little coral reef. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend that some of these are coral. So I'm going to go with these tiny floral plants, or you can go with these medium mushrooms. These medium mushrooms could also work well as coral. Let's go ahead and just put those down. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have the luminosity set like this, okay? And I'm going to bring the opacity, let's take it all the way up and then drop the contrast instead, because I don't want the coral to be see-through, so you can see this, okay? So I'm going to place one down like this on top, okay? Make sure it's set to random stamp. This is basically after placing a stamp, it's going to choose another one from the set randomly, okay? And just know as a caveat that the less stamps that are in a set, obviously the random is going to be not as random because there's less stamps in the set. You wouldn't expect the random to work as well with 3 stamps as you would if there's 11 stamps in it. So just kind of keep that in mind, okay? And also focus on either having this on or off. This is going to change the rotation. I'm going to turn it off. I don't want the rotation. I want to be able to control that manually with the keyboard instead. And I'm going to place a whole bunch of these down. In fact, you can even make some kind of bigger ones. I wouldn't make them too big because there's going to be a problem with the line width. You notice how giant this line width is and how thin this line width is. That's a scale issue, and I would avoid that because it looks really odd. So if you do scale up, don't scale up super large. Make sure that you scale up to a point where at least the line work isn't so crazy, okay? It isn't so much. It is kind of here a little bit. Contrast helps with that, but I want these large ones first, okay? I'm going to put down these large ones first and then put smaller ones on next, okay? I'm going to line them all along the edge because this is, to me, this is going to be a coral reef. Okay, we'll put one there, and we'll put a couple more here. All right, one there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, sweet. All right, let's go ahead and add some of those smaller ones that we had. Put those right in, okay? And we'll put them in like this, add them around, and I'm going to put them underneath. Let's put them a layer beneath. I hope it doesn't go underneath the cliff. I hope not. Let's take a look. Oh, it kind of does. Okay. So, let's see here. Is this that underwater cliff? We're going to go down a layer. There we go. That'll work. Okay. Sorry, I'm not giving more biome information, more geology. I would be incorporating more of that, but because I started kind of slow in the beginning, unfortunately, I couldn't go into that as much, so I apologize for that. Oop, let's bring the opacity up, make sure this is up. A layer 2. Okay, make sure I have the right layer. Okay, keep adding more of these to it because it's going to create this nice kind of coral rock. Because what we're going to end up doing is probably making some kind of settlement here where you have like an underwater house or something like that or whatever. Because that's what we're going to do here. And then also we're going to just throw some like random ones off to the side like this. So they're like just little sections just to kind of break it up. Place them around like this. It's that same thing that you did before. And at this point you can switch to the random rotation bit. So I would do that as you're doing these clusters outside in the negative space because you want to kind of make some room. And we might want to increase the size to it, the whole thing maybe. We're not sure yet. Let's take a look. Increase the whole thing. Remember, this is battle maps, not cities, so our settlement's going to be pretty big. I'm going to increase the size. That looks good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select every single stamp in this group by select all. Okay, oopsie, that didn't work. Okay, all right, I'm going to select every single one of these things except for this. Okay, and let's make sure I don't have any groups selected. Okay, here we go, looks good. Okay, yeah, that looks fine. We're going to stick with that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to now add some a coral design for the texture in the negative space, okay? So we're going to have to go to the catalog, B key, F key, okay? And we're going to go through the catalog and kind of just look at some things that might work good for coral. We don't actually have a coral texture, and that's okay. It's called being creative, so we kind of just take a look at our options here, see what looks good, and I'll make sure to add coral texture and some more water textures as well as winter textures and stuff to this style, so I'll ask the artist about that. Let's go ahead and use these fallen leaves alpha. It looks kind of interesting. I kind of like it. First I need to look at the size of it. Let's drop it down to, let's say, this size should work good. I'm also going to go ahead and change the contrast to where it's just this kind of grayish color, okay? And I'm also going to drop the opacity down. Okay, I'm going to do some strokes real quick in the negative areas and along the edge here, so it kind of looks like there is some coral on the ground here like this. Let's take a look at it and just see how that looks. It looks okay so far, not exactly how I would want it to be. It still does kind of look like leaves, so that might not work. Ledge here, okay. All right, didn't turn out the way exactly I wanted it to, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at our textures here. Okay, let's see, what do we got here? Check out our options here. Let's actually go with making the darker parts of our water, add in some shadows real quick, and then we can go ahead and add in that other texture. First I want to add a little bit of depth, and that's going to help me choose the next texture that I want. Normally I would do shadowing a little bit later in the process, but with this one I'm not entirely sure what texture to go with for here, and sometimes just moving on to the next step instead of racking yourself with what to do next, okay? Because sometimes you can get stuck in a rut, okay? And when that happens, you can get discouraged. And being discouraged helps you, makes you want to not work on the map anymore. So if you don't have the right texture that you want or the right stamps you want, instead of getting flustered and keep trying to doing it and just getting more upset and then quitting, move on to the next step. Go do something else. That way, maybe as you're going on with that next step, some inspiration will come to you and you'll be like, ah, this is what I should do, okay? So if you get discouraged and something doesn't work out, just go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, that's much easier than just getting flustered and then quitting. And sometimes it's okay to quit too. Just to let you know, you can take a little break, step away, step outside, enjoy the weather, go do something fun. Okay? You don't want to be on Inkarnate too much. Okay, yeah, you do. Okay. So we're going to add these shadows. I'm adding them in here just because I'm not sure what to do in the negative space yet, and that's okay. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to not know what to do yet. That's not a big deal. I'm just going to add the shadows in here just so I can kind of figure out the next texture that I want. So obviously the sun's going to be over here, and we can even add in a little bit here as well. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and pick a texture and manipulate it again like we did with the leaves, and it didn't turn out so hot, and that's okay. Mistakes are going to happen. That's all right. Forgive yourself. Be generous to yourself. The harsher you are yourself, the more likely you might not want to continue with the map. So be nice to yourself, okay? And don't forget, go to our Discord. Tons of people there, mentors, and specifically are there to help you with your map. Please ping them. They will help you. We have some incredibly good mentors. You can also ask some of the admins as well, okay? I'm an admin. I'm Mati. Go look for me. You can ask me questions. You can direct message, go to the help channel, or just ask questions and map feedback or general, okay? So let's go ahead and pick a texture that I want now. I'm going to choose one. I want to make sure there's a lot of artifacts in it. And to do that, I need to change the size, right? So we're going to change this size like this. Okay, go like that. I'm also going to do something different. I'm going to increase the contrast so that the changes are more noticeable. Okay, and I'm also going to do that rotation trick because we don't want to accidentally have the repetition show up. Okay, Bob Ross of map making. Everybody calls me that. Okay, let's get going here. All right, let's go ahead and use the softness brush. We're not going to use the edgy brush. I'm just going to go into the negative spaces only. That texture that I have like this, okay? I'm just going to fill in these little blue spaces. And it's okay to leave some blue, like these little blue sections in here, because it kind of adds a nice effect, okay? And remember, you're underwater, so it's okay to go over it as well, okay? Like that. And I'm going to do one last thing to show depth, and then we're going to quickly do a lake. I'm going to make it quick. All right. So, one other thing you can do is put waves on top, and I think I did do waves. There's a wave here, and we're just going to take it back to its original settings, bring it all the way up 100%, and bring it to layer 5, okay? And the reason why I'm doing that is because you want, if you're looking down, obviously the surface of the water is going to be the first thing you see, and then you're going to go, and then your eye is going to go down to the surface if there's enough light, if it's shallow enough for light to penetrate the depths of that water, so that you can see what's under the water. Okay, so I'm just going to take these waves. I'm going to make sure to set everything back to its defaults. Okay, and I think there's actually some waves with some white crests too. Let's just double check to make sure. Wave, bingo. I want those white crests, okay? That's kind of nice. And the reason why I want those white crests is because it's also going to create contrast so that it really pops out at you so that it looks like it's a layer above. And so I'll place some waves down real quick so you can kind of see what I'm talking about, okay? All right, and I would connect them a little bit so that you have some waves and then have some not connected, okay? So kind of keep that in mind. Notice how this wave right here, this swell, it's called a swell. This swell is not connected. It's just so you don't have these lines of waves, and that looks really weird, okay? And it looks a little unnatural, okay? So just make sure, just like we did here with this river, right? We didn't connect all of these together. We left some spaces, right? To give it that natural look. You're gonna do the exact same thing. That same concept is gonna be here, okay? All right, so we know now which way the water is going. The waves are going this way, okay? Those are the crests that are folding down, okay, and breaking. All right, let's go ahead and add a couple more. And I definitely recommend that they overlap whatever's under the ground so that it looks like, indeed, the waves are above, okay? So that's where the water surface is. Okay, so kind of keep that part in mind. You definitely want to make sure that the waves are overlapping the stamps that are below. Okay, super important. We'll add a couple more wave stamps in here. And if you feel that's not enough, you can also texture in some waves if you want. Add a little bit of white here so you have some trail. I'm not going to do that here. You can even use white, use clouds to create some like mist. that's caused by waves crashing and by wind. Waves, swells build up. They create that crescent shape, right? And a lot of wind hits those crescent shapes and causes a lot of mist. Okay, so you can do that using these clouds and making sure that you increase the brightness and drop the saturation. And I definitely would recommend that you drop the opacity as well. You don't want them to be super bright like they're a cloud. Okay, when mist is much, much lighter, it's not as condensed with moisture as a cloud is. A cloud has very dense moisture. Mist is very, very fine. It's very small and it's not as visible. So don't, if you're going to use a cloud for mist, drop the opacity. And I'm going to put them right next to some of the some of the waves, so it looks like that the wind is taking the mist and carrying it off of those crests. Okay, all right. 5 more minutes until we're supposed to be done, but thankfully only one more left. I tried to go as quickly as possible. Okay, now we're going to work on a lake. I'm going to make this real quick. Okay, and also just, you know, with this underwater one, more textures, but I think what would look really good here is some kind of underwater hut or something like that, or a seahorse's, you know, townhouse or something. I don't know, whatever it is. Everyone likes a good townhouse. Okay, all right, let's do a lake. I'm gonna do it real fast too, and a lake is kind of hard. If you're doing fantasy battle map, it's up to you how much of the lake that you want. If you want a full-on lake, the scale's going to drop down. If you're only showing a section of the lake where like the village is, which is what we're probably going to do here so we can keep it short, then you're only going to show a section of the lake instead of the whole lake. So subtract mode, circle brush. I don't recommend using the edgy brush when making your rivers or lakes. Okay, edgy brush is okay when it comes to kind of making your basic shape with the add mode for land masses, but it's not great for making your rivers and your lakes. Okay, so subtract mode, circle brush, and we're just going to create a section of the lake like this. Okay, and our village is obviously going to be right here, or there's going to be a lake house or something like that, or you can create a little island on the lake and there's something there. Okay, so let's go ahead and just kind of make a large section of where the lake is. Okay, so this is going to be the lake. Hello, Cheryl. Hello. Glad you're here. Awesome. Cheryl's one of our mentors on our Discord. I totally recommend going to Discord. Cheryl's also one of our admin. Go ahead and ask her for tons of questions. She's great. Her maps are also fantastic, so go check that out. Okay, so we have our lake here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to create a real quick little island. And what I'm going to do is just use these composite stamps. Okay, the composite stamps work great. Let's just go over here. Let's go ahead and choose this one right here. And so we're making a little island. Let's just put one right there. Okay, so the island is relatively close to the shore, and I'm going to rotate it to where the island somewhat fits with this general shape. So I've added that composite stamp like that, and overall its shape does fit in right here where the shore is. It's not absolutely mandatory, but it does kind of help with the continuity of the geography so that it doesn't look super odd. Okay, and you can also just move it a little bit farther away because you can add some land in there. And so I'm going to go to the add mode, drop the size down, and I'm going to create just a little bit of land underneath and create some where there's no land. Okay, so some of it will have some shore. Okay, so this section right here is going to be shore, and the rest of it will be cliff. So this is cliff, and this part is shore, okay, just so you can see it. Okay, and I'm going to add one more stamp, one more cliff stamp in there to add like a second tier or a second level on here. I'm going to place it right there. Okay, and let's just make sure that's a layer above it. Perfect. Okay, there you go. Looks kind of weird. Don't think I'll put it there. Maybe put it somewhere else. This kind of looks like a tooth, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a nice tooth. Okay, I'm just going to place it there. Okay, so now you got that. All right, looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and add a couple more along the lake edge. Just real quick. Let's go back into our cliff. I'm just going to search for it. And I just keep forgetting to favorite those stamps. Guys, do not make the same mistake that I do. Favorite your stamps. Absolutely favorite your stamps. Oops. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and line it here, and normally I would put cliffs down first before adding, but before you do the water part, so that way you can just put it up against the stamps, but it's okay. I'm gonna try to speed this up. I don't want to take too long. Okay, so we're just gonna have a little bit of cliff there. One more. Okay, and that will work just fine like that. Okay, looks good. And this right here looks like it needs to be filled in with the add mode right there. There we go. Okay. All right, so you have some ledge right there. Okay, let's zoom out, take a look. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay, let's go ahead and add a little bit more cliffing here. The side. I'll go ahead and mention a little bit about lakes. Okay, and there's a lot of different ways that a lake can be formed. Lakes can be formed from just rainfall and snowmelt. You can find a lot of those in the mountains, and generally those are the headwaters of rivers. Okay, so like in the mountains, you might have a mountain lake, and then it pours out and creates a river. Okay, and those rivers go out to the ocean. Okay, there's also what's called a caldera. There's one in the state that I live. I live in the state of Oregon in the United States, and Oregon has what's called Crater Lake. And Crater Lake was once called Mount Mazama, or Mount Mazama, I think it is, Mount Mazama. And it blew its top. This is a volcano. It blew its top, and then it just spilled its guts all over the place, and then lost its core part, right? And because it blasted off in a large blast, and then through erosion, wind, rain, snowmelt, it caused a depression, and then it filled with rainwater and snowmelt. Okay, that's basically how a caldera is created. There's also meteoroid impacts that can crash, hit the ground, and they create a large impression, and can also fill with rainwater and snowmelt. And then lakes can be formed from just depressions in the ground, filled up, and can be filled up from a lake or from, again, rainwater. Okay, so that's a little bit about lakes. So now we've got our nice little tooth island here. Shark tooth island. Oh, I like that. We got a little shark tooth island here, and we're gonna go ahead and quickly add some textures, some vegetation. Let's do vegetation first. I'm just imagining what I'm gonna put here on a settlement, maybe like a building or a house or something, or a windmill. Not sure yet. We'll take a look. Let's go ahead and add in some trees and some bushes so we have some landscape. Let's go ahead and put a forest up here. Okay, just put a nice little forest here. And we'll put in a nice little tree here too as well. Okay, got some trees on this island. And we can excavate them, get rid of them, cut them down later if you don't want them there when it comes to the settlement bit. Just gonna add in a couple trees so at least there's some there. Don't forget that size issue, drop a couple down. Okay, let's go ahead and do our bushes. I'm gonna start with the larger size first. Just kind of click, point them around here a couple times. Okay, and then go back to that smaller size. Okay, and we'll add in the last texture, and then we'll call it good. And I'll also be sure to make sure that this thing, the finished piece, is in my profile, so that way you can download it, clone, and edit it when the time comes next month to add the settlements to these. Okay, and I'm super, super excited about settlements. I'm just about reached the limit of my terrain. There's only one more terrain video next week at this same time. Okay, 10 a.m. PDT, Wednesday. Okay, so don't forget that. And I also posted in the link to the calendar for next month's streams. That's October. Okay, Halloween time, spooky, spooky. Okay, that's coming up. So go ahead and check for that link as well, so that you know what I'm doing. Okay, and like I said, it's just going to be putting settlements on every single one of these panels, and I'm super excited about that. Let's go ahead and do some texturing and then wrap it up. Okay, first things first, we're going to make our shoreline. Okay, I've already decided that this part right here is going to be shore, so we're just going to increase the opacity or just leave it at 50%. Use that softness, and we're just going to apply it here. Oopsie, got to make sure it's set to the right layer as well. And let's increase the opacity here. So this is kind of where our shore is going to be, like this. Okay. And I set it to 88%, so I'm going to add this section right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the brightness so that I have a little bit more obvious that there's shoreline. So just this edge right here, like this. Okay, I'll increase the brightness or increase the opacity just a hair. There we go. So you kind of have this kind of sand-like shore edge like that. Okay, go back to that right here, and we're going to add a little bit of sand here. Say a little sandbar is right here. And I'll fix that problem right there, and we'll wrap this up so that I don't keep poor Philip up too much later. Okay, so a little sandbar here. Okay, there we go. And remember, don't forget that bright one, and just kind of, you can even go in a little bit more right here to show that it goes in a little bit further inland. Okay, and if you want, you can even do that little single click technique that I use to kind of create more transition. Not a requirement, but it does look kind of nice in my opinion. Okay, and the last bit is to add a little bit of texture to that ground so that it doesn't look so flat green. And I've kept the shadows all at default, so there should be no shadow incontinuity problems or anything like that. Make sure you fix that ledge there. And I'm going to go ahead and add a texture, then maybe just add a little bit of rocks, and then we'll call it good because I don't want to take too long. All right, let's go ahead and increase my size here, and I'm just going to do that negative space, okay, like this. Just where the negative space is, and don't forget, don't accidentally go over your thing, okay? And so add it here to a little bit. So you have a little bit of texture there, and of course, don't forget to add some deep water to this. So we're going to drop that opacity down, go to a larger size. Remember, keep it away from the shorelines. Make sure it's set to BG. So select the 2 key, and don't accidentally go against your shoreline. You want to keep that lighter blue so that it represents shallower water. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. That's why you have that base texture. So then you don't have to like do the lighter color. You know, it's already there for you. You're just adding the deep part, okay? It's just making it easier for you. Okay, let's do that. Looks pretty good. We just want that shallow water to be where the shorelines are, okay? And you can add in just a little bit, some sections where it's just a little bit deeper if you want, like here and here. Okay, maybe a little bit there and a little bit there. Okay, and it's a lake, so it doesn't need waves, though we can add it in. Let's just do that real quick. Let me just add 20 more things, but hey, we have to wrap this up soon, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, 30 more things, okay? 30 more things, we'll do it. 30 more things. So just let me do these 30 more things, and then we'll be done. Okay, and I just want to create which way the waves are going. Let's go that way. Let's drop the size down even more. Okay, I think that size looks good, and make sure the opacity is low. And we're just going to go ahead and apply those waves like this, okay, here and there. And normally I like to just do that other texture better, and I'm going to do that instead. I'm going to go with white. I'm going to bring the brightness all the way up, saturation, contrast down. I'm just going to go with white so that it shows the crest, and I kind of like that better. It's just my personal preference. Okay, that looks much better. Yeah, I'm digging that. Much better. Get some white crests in there. There we go. All right, sweet. All right, so far so good. We're gonna add one more thing, okay? Just so that you can add a little bit more depth to things, but I want to show you that you can add like a rocky cliff real quick. I recommend using the cliffs that have the grass because you're going to put them together. I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to show you where you can create a rocky terrain. So you're going to place this rock, kind of this rocky cliff right here. You're going to place another one. I'm going to make this real quick. I don't want to take too long. Okay, I'm going to put one right here. So that you have what this is basically like a rocky kind of shoreline. Okay. Okay, that doesn't look good. That looks better. There we go. Okay, so you have this rocky shoreline, okay? Don't forget to add in some rock textures. So let's go ahead and take a look at our options for textures. There should be some rocks in here somewhere. Take a look. I don't see any. Let's go with, you know, I think, I'm gonna take a look at all our rock options here. Let's go with this one right here. It's just the rock. And we're gonna go with changing the size way down. Let's go with that size. Don't forget you wanna rotate. And we're gonna drop the opacity, and we don't wanna do large strokes because that is where you're gonna notice the pattern in the texture. So the way to avoid that is just do sections at a time with this rock, okay? And make sure you put that rock texture only where the rock cliffs are, right? So we're adding this, we're gonna go to FG, so 1 key, okay? We're just gonna add a little bit of rock here. Okay, so you have some rock. You're gonna do a couple strokes just to kind of get it to where you want it so it shows up. The lighter it is, that means the more it's covered in sand, okay? So that's the trick, okay? If you want the rock to look like it's but more not as covered, completely uncovered with sand, then just keep adding it until it becomes that dark. Okay, if you want it to look like it's under the sand, then don't bother with adding more strokes. Okay, I put some over there just because it looks like maybe there's just a little bit of rock there, okay? And we can add just a little bit of rock there. One last thing I want to do is just add some sand into the background layer so it looks like there's depth. So you just take this sand texture like this, okay, and you put it in just a little bit, okay, not too much, like this, so it looks like there's some sand in the water, okay. I'm gonna do that same thing to this edge right here, okay, because as you notice, there's this hard line. There's this hard line here, okay, and you kind of want to avoid those super hard lines. Too much doesn't look good. I think I might have used too bright of a texture too. My bad. Should be using a darker texture. Okay, there we go. And so we're gonna go along this ledge here with that texture. Let's increase the size just a little bit. There we go. Okay, and what this is basically the sand that's under the water, and that just gives it more depth. Okay, and you can do the same thing with the grass color right here too if you want it all along those edges. That's up to you. The last bit is just to add the shadows. I'm just gonna add some shadows right here, that ambient inclusion. Okay, and then we'll call it good. All right. See, I didn't favorite it. That's what happens. Okay. Quickly add in that ambient occlusion bit. We're gonna set it to BG and just put it right here. Let's increase the saturation. Just put it right here so there's a little bit of shadow. The water. Let's go even darker. Okay, and that's just so that it looks like there's some shadow and some depth, and we want some depth. Okay, and we'll add a little bit here as well, and just a little bit here as well. Oopsie, FG, 1 key. Okay, right there. Okay, well, there you have it. That is your lake. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Don't forget, you guys, that you can go ahead and you can clone and edit this. I'll put this to my profile, and then you can clone, edit it, take a look at it, add your own settlements, or save it for later, for next month when I decide to get started, and we can go ahead and put settlements to all of these. Don't forget, if you have questions, you can ask Philip, and don't forget to go to our Discord server. Okay, that link should be in the chat. Go sign up. Do that. Great community, lots of people who are going to want to help you to get better. Okay, so go to our Discord server. Don't forget that when you get there, to go to the roles channel. Go ahead and click the Inkarnator role, because when you click the Inkarnator role, you will be able to see all the channels in the server. Okay, so just know that if you don't click that role, you probably won't be able to find the other channels. I also want to mention some announcements that I did at the beginning of the stream. I did already mention throughout the stream that there is the schedule for next month. Go check that out. As soon as all the tool videos have been completed, we'll be doing what I'm going to call Inkarnate Shorts, which are going to be just very short videos, 60 to 120 seconds, that are going to basically be showing you all the basics, like how to sign up, how to subscribe, how to do this, how to do that, just the basic stuff. These videos will be extremely helpful for onboarding new people. But don't worry, I won't be ignoring all you pro users and you who are a little bit more familiar with the tool. Okay? I'm also going to be doing possibly guest streamers. These are going to be people from our EA group. Okay? That's early access. You can find them on our Discord. Some of them are mentors. Please ping them if you have any questions or are looking for suggestions. Okay? Also, we're going to be doing, there's something in our Discord called a Stream Watch role. The Stream Watch role is a role that you can opt into that allows you to get updates with our YouTube channel, Discord streams, videos, stuff like that. Okay, so if you want to be alerted of future videos, streams, content like that, go ahead and on our Discord do the Stream Watch role. Okay, also subscribe to our channel. Okay, if you want to check out more content, you want to know when we're adding more content, check out the calendar, and of course, please subscribe. Okay, click the alert button, that little bell, if you want to know when we're about to stream or we've uploaded a video. Go check that out. Okay. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here at the stream. I appreciate you, Philip, for taking care of the chat for me. So everyone, please say thank you to Philip for helping that. And I will see you guys next week, next Wednesday, 10 a.m. PDT with the last terrain stream. Thank you so much for watching and stay safe and healthy, everybody. Merry map making.